Welcome, viewers. Today we witness the darkest hour of Europe. A devastating fate unfolds. Tens of thousands of heavily armored Hungarian knights perished within their burning camp. King Bela IV thought his river fortress was completely impenetrable. He was wrong. But against the phantom cavalry of the ruthless Mongol Empire, walls mean absolutely nothing. How did an invincible European army fall into such a ruinous trap? Let us find out. The year is 1241, and the massive Mongol war machine is tearing through Eastern Europe. Standing in their destructive path is the mighty kingdom of Hungary, led by the proud king, Bela. Historical records say Hungary possessed the most heavily armored fighting force on Earth. Thousands of elite Christian knights gathered to protect their sacred homeland from the unknown invaders. King Bela marched his massive army to the western banks of the freezing Sajo River in the spring. He built a heavily fortified perimeter, utilizing a massive traditional wagon fort. Heavy wooden cots were chained together tightly, creating an absolute wall of timber and iron. Inside this wooden fortress, the Hungarian knights felt an overwhelming sense of absolute security. They believed their chainmail and long lances made them completely superior to any Eastern cavalry. The freezing Sajo River provided a massive natural barrier against the approaching enemy. Only a single narrow stone bridge allowed passage across the dark and treacherous rushing currents. Bela placed his most elite crossbowmen and disciplined spearmen to guard this critical choke point. He was entirely certain no army could cross the river without taking the bridge first. European doctrine taught that a strong defensive position was the ultimate key to victory. Yet they were not facing a conventional European army that played by the traditional rules. They were facing Batu Khan and his supreme military commander, the legendary and brilliant Subutai. Subutai was a master of mental warfare and the finest tactician of the 13th century. As the sun vanished, a thick and suffocating fog rolled completely over the muddy riverbank. The Hungarian defenders peered into the darkness, tightly gripping their weapons in the freezing night air. Suddenly, the silence was violently shattered by the terrifying sound of galloping hooves. The Mongol vanguard launched a furious and chaotic assault directly against the narrow stone bridge. Arrows rained down from the darkness, striking the thick wooden shields of the terrified Hungarian guards. But the Europeans held their ground, unleashing a devastating volley from their heavy crossbows. The armor-piercing bolts easily tore through the light leather of the charging Mongol attackers. Dozens of Mongol warriors perished on the muddy stones, blocking the narrow pathway completely. The rapid skirmish was intensely fierce, greatly favoring the entrenched European defenders. Realizing they could not break the line, the surviving Mongols retreated back into the shadows. A massive roar of triumph echoed through the Hungarian camp as they celebrated their victory. King Bela smiled proudly from his lavish command tent, utterly convinced that his strategy had worked. Scholars believe this exact moment of arrogance sealed the tragic fate of the entire kingdom. Confident the river was truly impassable, the king ordered his exhausted men to rest. Thousands of knights removed their heavy steel helmets and began to unlace their protective chainmail. They left their weapons stacked carelessly against the wooden wagons and lay down upon the cold mud. The camp slowly fell into a deep and peaceful slumber, fully unaware of the approaching darkness.
Would you have ordered your men to sleep so soundly after a single minor victory at the bridge?
This fatal underestimation of the enemy is exactly what Subutai was waiting for. Far from the camp, Subutai stood completely motionless on the misty eastern riverbank. The chaotic attack on the stone bridge was nothing but a carefully orchestrated decoy. It was designed to fix European attention, while the devastating maneuver began. While the Hungarians slept, Subutai led his main force miles downstream into the dark forest. Under the thick fog, highly skilled Mongol combat engineers silently entered the freezing water. Working with perfect discipline, they rapidly constructed a massive wooden pontoon bridge. They lashed heavy timber planks together with thick ropes, creating a solid path over the river. Not a single torch was lit, and no commands were shouted as the massive structure took shape in the dark. This incredible feat of rapid combat engineering was truly unheard of in 13th century Europe. Once the bridge was secured, tens of thousands of Mongol horse archers began to cross the river like ghosts. They wrapped the hooves of their small steppe horses in thick cloth to muffle any sound on the wooden planks. Line after line of elite warriors slipped silently into the dense forest on the western bank. Subutai led a flawless flanking maneuver, entirely bypassing the fortified European front. Meanwhile, Batu Khan prepared his artillery forces directly across from the sleeping Wagon fort. They assembled multiple light trebuchets in silence, loading them with heavy stones and burning pitch. The Mongol machine operated with the cold efficiency of an apex predator hunting prey. The sleeping knights were completely oblivious to the massive invisible noose tightening around them. Their wagon fort, which was designed to protect them, was about to become a claustrophobic, ruinous trap. The thick fog began to lift slightly as the first pale light of dawn approached the eastern horizon. Subutai raised his hand, signaling his hidden cavalry forces to move into their final strike positions. Every Mongol archer drew their bow simultaneously, awaiting the ultimate command. Batu Khan gave the brutal order, and the heavy trebuchets unleashed their destructive payload. Massive, flaming projectiles tore through the morning mist, crashing directly into the crowded wagon fort. Wooden cots splintered apart as explosive fire pots ignited the dry canvas tents within seconds. The camp instantly erupted into absolute chaos as sleeping men were consumed by raging flames. Knights woke up in sheer terror, desperately scrambling through the mud to find their heavy chainmail. There was absolutely no time to equip their complex protective armor before the devastation began. Thousands of arrows rained down from the sky like a deadly storm, striking down the unprotected men. The unarmored Europeans panicked, blindly trampling over each other to escape the intense flames. King Bela stumbled out of his burning command tent, his royal velvet cape covered in dirt and ash. He watched his magnificent Invincible army face a completely systematic decimation. The chained wagons now acted as a massive cage, preventing any organized cavalry charge outward. In pure desperation, the surviving Hungarian commanders desperately searched for a way to break the siege. Through the thick black smoke, they suddenly spotted a large gap in the Mongol encirclement to the west. It seemed like a miraculous pathway to freedom, a clear escape route leading from the burning camp. Without thinking, the panicked European soldiers abandoned their heavy weapons and ran toward the open gap. They pushed and shoved each other, desperately pouring out of the burning wagon fort in a chaotic stampede. This was the most terrifying, brilliant part of Subutai's master plan, known as opening the cage. He intentionally left that specific path unguarded to encourage the trapped enemy to flee. A fleeing soldier drops his shield and cannot fight back, making him an incredibly easy target to hunt. As the fleeing Hungarians ran down the muddy road, the hidden Mongol cavalry finally struck. Thousands of horse archers emerged perfectly from the surrounding forests, riding alongside the fleeing mob. They avoided close combat, simply riding parallel to the road, firing with lethal precision. It was no longer a battle. It was a systematic, highly organized execution of broken men. The fallen forms of European knights littered the long road for nearly 30 miles out of the burning valley. Their heavy armor, meant to protect them, was entirely useless against this mobile terror. King Bela managed to escape total destruction by fleeing into the mountains with his loyal guards. He left behind the completely shattered remnants of what was once the most powerful army in Europe. Subutai stood victorious upon a high hill, watching the great European kingdom burn to the ground. His brilliant tactical mind and ruthless execution annihilated a vastly superior force. The devastating Battle of Mohi proved that static defenses were completely obsolete. The armored knight, the ultimate symbol of European power, was rendered useless in a single day. The terrifying Mongol war machine had forcefully kicked down the defensive front doors to the Western world. Entire nations trembled in absolute fear as the grim news rapidly spread across the continent. No king or emperor felt safe inside their massive stone castles after hearing the dark tales of Subutai. They realized that traditional methods of warfare were completely outdated compared to this new threat. Only the unexpected passing of the Great Khan saved Western Europe from complete destruction. But the deep mental scars left by the phantom cavalry would haunt the European mind for centuries. The muddy banks of the Sajo River will forever remember the brutal cost of arrogance and pride. The tactic of leaving a false escape route completely broke the discipline of a great army. When heavily armored men abandon their weapons to run, they become absolutely defenseless. Subutai understood human psychology better than any European general. He knew that a cornered enemy fights to the bitter end, but a fleeing enemy simply perishes. The European reliance on heavy static defenses became their fatal weakness. Chained wagons could effectively stop a frontal charge, but failed against extreme mobility. A massive fortress without an organized retreat plan quickly becomes a burning wasteland. This devastating battle effectively erased a quarter of the Hungarian people. Thriving cities and beautiful stone churches were reduced to nothing but smoking black ruins. The golden crown of Hungary was dragged through the filthy mud of a humiliating defeat. Historical records describe the terrible aftermath as an apocalyptic nightmare. Crows and wolves feasted upon the frozen remains of noble Christian knights for several months. No reinforcements ever arrived from the west to help the shattered Hungarian kingdom. The Holy Roman Empire watched in absolute terror as the massive eastern borders collapsed. They finally realized that their massive stone castles might not save them from the phantom cavalry. If the Mongol Empire had not turned back, the map of Europe would look vastly different. Subutai had successfully engineered a brilliant, coordinated attack in history. He managed to crush two massive European armies in separate locations at once. Only 2 days earlier, another Mongol force utterly destroyed the Polish defenders. These highly synchronized victories demonstrated an unprecedented level of skill. European commanders were still fighting isolated battles like medieval warlords. But the Mongol generals were operating as a unified, modern war machine. They used swift horseback messengers to coordinate massive troop movements across vast distances. The Battle of Mohi stands as a brutal testament to the power of tactical deception. King Bela IV eventually returned to his destroyed kingdom to slowly rebuild the ashes. He learned the brutal lesson of Mohi and began constructing massive stone castles everywhere. Never again would a Hungarian king rely on a wooden fort to defend his people. The legacy of the Mongol invasion permanently altered the defenses of Europe. It forced them to evolve their military tactics to survive against highly mobile threats. The bones of the fallen knights slowly disappeared into the dark mud of the freezing river. But the dark legend of Subutai and his phantom cavalry will never be forgotten. We must always remember that absolute security is often a fatal illusion. A rigid military mind will always be easily shattered by a creative enemy. History teaches us that true strength lies in adaptability, not just heavy armor. The ghosts of Mohi continue to whisper their tragic warnings across the eastern plains. Their tragic sacrifice serves as a permanent reminder of the high cost of arrogance. We have finally uncovered the dark mystery behind the devastating fall of Hungary. The disaster at Mohi shattered the illusion of European supremacy forever. Was Subutai's brilliant tactic a stroke of genius, or just pure cruelty? Please tell us below. If you highly enjoyed this dark history dive, please like, share, and subscribe for more epic tales.